Good morning. Today is the 6th Sunday of Easter. Meeting people, many say, "Oh, I miss this," or "I wish this." And I was thinking, boy, I really miss getting a haircut. I certainly miss baseball. And I miss seeing all of you. All the priests I know say the same thing. We all just want so much to be able to celebrate and pray with you, with each other. And hopefully soon that will happen. Recently, I met a man who I've known for a long time. And I asked him, how are you doing during this time of COVID-19? And he said, well, I live alone, and I'm used to that. But sometimes I feel very lonely. And I thought, there's a difference between being alone, not being around people, and feeling lonely. And I thought about the gospel today. Beautiful gospel from St. John. Jesus is talking to his apostles. And Jesus knows that the next day, Good Friday, people will crucify him, kill him. And his apostles will just be so depressed and afraid. And Jesus knows that after his resurrection and after his ascension to heaven, the apostles are going to feel alone and lonely. So Jesus says in the gospel, yes, I'm going back to the Father, but the Father and I will send you. And the translations are very different. Some translations say a consoler, a comforter, an advocate, a helper. But the promise is the same, that Jesus is saying to his followers, you're never going to be left alone or lonely, that God is always going to be with you no matter what happens in your life. And that's the promise of Jesus. Remember a few weeks ago, the gospel, the story about the two men going to Emmaus. And they're depressed, and they're afraid. And Jesus comes to be with them, to accompany them on this journey, and to promise comfort and support and encouragement. And we all need that right now, because I'm sure most of us at various times kind of feel isolation, loneliness, because we hunger. We're human. We hunger for contact. We hunger to be with each other. And especially if there's times of sickness, times of depression and grief and concern and fear about the future. In the second reading today from the letter of St. Peter, it's a beautiful, wonderful letter. It's only 5 chapters. So if you would read one chapter each day, you'd be done before the end of the week. But St. Peter himself certainly knew the meaning of suffering. He saw Jesus suffer. And Peter himself suffered for his own mistakes and his own sins. And in that reading today, we see that word sufferer over and over and over again. And St. Peter says suffering happens. We can't avoid it. If we think, there'll be no more suffering, that's not real. But St. Peter says, Jesus suffered, so Jesus understands your suffering. Jesus is with you in your suffering. So never doubt that. And that's a good encouragement for us to pray. If we pray, really take that time every day to just pray, that feeling of isolation, that feeling of loneliness is going to disappear. Why? Because we suffer. But Jesus knows what that suffering means. And when we pray, Jesus is with us in our suffering. As we think about suffering and prayer, this Monday, May 18th, will be the 100th anniversary of the birth of St. John Paul II, wonderful Pope. In his own life, he had a lot of suffering. Remember, he grew up during World War II, and he saw the suffering of the people of Poland. In his own life, he suffered a lot. He was shot, trying to recover from that. His life was never the same after he was shot. And then at the end of his life, he really struggled with Parkinson's disease, which really crippled him. But his faith never stopped. His faith never went away. Till the end of his life, he depended on the Lord. He trusted that the Lord was with him in his suffering. And so this Monday, May 18th, especially if it's a bad day, it's a hard day for you, think about St. John Paul II. Remember his suffering and ask him to help you in your suffering.